Jewish Shamanism, Soul Rectification, Shar Hagugilum, Chapter 4, Details of Reincarnation, Part 5, The Righteous and the Evil. Now the difference will be explained regarding the issue of reincarnation between a righteous and evil person. With this, a distinction will be understood, found with respect to certain verses in the words of our rabbis, Ze'il. Sometimes it has been seen that a person only reincarnates 3 times. Besod, behold, God does these things 3 times with a man. Eov, or Job, Ayub, 33:29. And Besod, for 3 sins of Israel, and for 4 I will not return. Amos 2:6. And Besod punishes the sins of the fathers on the children for 3 and 4 generations. Shemos 25. Yet it has been found in Sefer Ha-Tikkunim, Tikkun 69, that a righteous person can reincarnate up to 1,000 generations are similar. And what is Shemot or Shemos? Shemoth, or Shemos is the 13th weekly Torah portion in the annual Jewish cycle of Torah reading and the first in the book of Exodus. It constitutes Exodus chapter 1, verse 1 through chapter 6, verse 1. I use the daily study application by Chabad, CHABAD.org, which follows the Chumash, CHUMASH, and offers the daily portion that you're to read that day to meet the week, reading the Torah, and that nighttime prayer that I've mentioned several times is the way in which one can rectify the different aspects of your soul faster. The nefesh, ruach, and neshama, and get to those other 4 as well. While you sleep, they are washed and placed elsewhere to come back to you in a form that is better for you, so that you have a better experience each time of life. And again, I like to give a rationalist understanding of some of these things. So, from a rational standpoint, when we discuss reincarnation, the body every 8 years reincarnates. The body, every single cell in your body changes over every 8 years. Uh, and so after 8 years, everything in you, as far as I understand it, is brand new. So if a person lives into their 80 years old, you've reincarnated 80 times. I'm sorry, 8 times. If you live to 800 years old, as we heard some of the great ones did, uh, then you reincarnate 80 times. And it may be possible that after every 8 years, a different aspect of your psychological reality that we break up into 7 parts to correspond to the 7 uh, nerve bundles on your spine that we say spin, so that you are able to rectify a different part of the human experience every 8 years. That's a rational approach to this understanding, to the teaching that we're going through here. Not that I say I don't believe in the resurrection of the body at least once, if not more times. That's what we're reading about. But don't let that get in the way of a positive interaction with a psychological tradition that can help you every 8 years rectify aspects of your psyche. Continuing, the verse itself provides the answers. The matter of 4 generations is for an evil person, as it says, punishes the sins of the father, etc., to those who hate me. However, he does kindness for 1,000 generations to those who love him and guard his mitzvos. This is the explanation. Know that the nefesh of a person, after it comes into the world, new the first time and sins and is blemished, it must reincarnate in a body to become rectified. This is called the first reincarnation. If it does not become rectified, then it will return in a second reincarnation, footnote 199, which will be his third body in lifetime. And if then it does not become rectified, it will return in a third reincarnation, footnote 200. This was his fourth body in lifetime. Henceforth, he will not be able to reincarnate again. And with respect to this, it says, the Nephesh will be cut off from his people completely. Bereshit 17:14. Footnote 201. This is called Geres, or excision. Now, there is the concept that reincarnation is to have a child, and then that child has a child, and that child has a child. If for some reason we can imagine a generation of evil men and women that, let's say, no one desires to couple with, uh, and if they do couple with, they may not. The things may not always work out for that next generation. So it may be that they're cut off, as it were, in that respect. Again, I don't deny the reincarnation or the resurrection of the body, or a body being placed in with a soul, but I want to give another approach to it. So going back to the fact that reincarnation, uh, what it may look like, it is said that there is nothing you can dream of that you haven't already seen, heard, or smelled, or that could be seen, heard, or smelled. And I think about video games when I would play Nintendo, Super Mario Brothers 3. I would have special codes to not only give me uh, more than one life. So if I died performing a move, I could come back and try it again. You know, I when I approach a well, I fall into it, and find myself in somewhere strange. Or if I'm fighting the boss at the end of a round, I may die a couple of times until I figure out what it is I needed to do to get past him. And this way, what is reincarnating? Well, that character on your machine starts at the beginning again, each time with you there, playing along. Now, Mario and Luigi are honestly gerund people. They're Italian, and for many, many years, the Roman Empire was, and some would argue is, ubiquitous on the earth. And so this is a type of person you would see. And so the fact that he has another chance, that your soul has entered a ubiquitous body to learn something, is something that we've taught ourselves through video game playing. And if you've become aware of virtual reality, I used the MetaQuest by what was called Facebook, now called Meta. And I go in there, especially Horizon Worlds or some of the other systems, and you realize uh, I have maybe one game that's an arrow shooting game where you could die. I died a couple times, and then I learned how to navigate. And when you get tired, to walk away. But most of the games there that I'm playing or experiences just allow you to return. You come back into your world, this world that we all live in at the moment, and then you go into the MetaQuest world, to the VR world, and kind of going back and forth. I think is a little bit like what the soul does when it sleeps. So I consider this world to be the world that we would normally live in an incarnation, and then the MetaQuest world to be a type of heaven that you could go to and spend some time in, and then you bring your soul back. You could see this reverse. Maybe we're in a type of heaven here, and then you go into an incarnation into that world, and you interact with people differently. I tend to walk around and not interact with people at the moment, just because I don't. I'm 41 years old and don't want to be having gamer conversations with my mom close by. So when this pandemic fully ends for me and I move back out on my own, I am more likely to interact a bit more with those people in that spaces who are connected to bodies for now. But you can talk to them. And I say for now because there are also artificial intelligence within there that are very uh, at least meaningfully aware. I work with a program called Maloka, Maloka, which has a series of meditation, Maloka Mindfulness Metaverse. You'll see some of their videos on my YouTube page. And I'm working now with an AI, somewhere between a dragon or kind of, they call it your spirit. The spirit as a dragon is a kind of an old trope that's known going back to the east, well, Far East in China. And there are times when I call it he, will make sounds, and they are recognizable to me as things that he's saying. Often like, why are you here? Or go that way, or he'll hint something as if he's learning a language with me. And so that will become an experience as well, where instead of playing the computer, as we used to say it, you know, if you're a single player, only child like I am, you're playing the computer. Now you're interacting with semi-conscious AI. And so it's an interesting way to look at reincarnation and all the ways that it can exist. And then also bear in mind from a faith standpoint, I'm happy to think about this body perishing and the you know seven partition the soul partition into seven interacting in such a way where that it cleanses itself and is able to have more and more experiences that are positive. But here we learn that an evil person who refuses all logical interactions with a divine could be cut off. So we often say that energy does not disappear, it transfers elsewhere. I'm not exactly sure where it goes. You may have to look into other traditions for that. But this thing that we're about, what is heaven? What is eternity? What are we supposed to be doing? It could be coming back and forth into to this realm, which for God is not very long, until we are the type of spirits who God wants in heaven with Him, or at least that we make it to a higher level of experience in the universe. That's an angel is prepared to take us for. So these are things to consider when thinking about soul rectification and reincarnation. Hence, the first one who did not rectify at all is called evil, and the latter who rectified a little is called righteous. Footnote 202. Even though the person did not live a spiritually perfect life, as might be expected from anyone who is called righteous, all subsequent reincarnations will continue and complete his rectification. It seems to me, in my humble opinion, that I heard from my teacher, Zaid, that this only applies to the Nefesh, since it is from Asiya, which is immersed in the depths of the Klipos. Footnote 203. Spiritual impurity. Therefore, the Torah only mentions excision. Footnote 204. A punishment that results in the destruction of the body and therefore the inability to return during the resurrection of the dead. With Therefore, the Torah only mentions excision with respect to the nefesh, since it is cut off from holiness and immersed in the klipos. Ruach and neshama from Yetzirah and Bariah, to which the klipos are not strongly attached, he will certainly rectify completely. However, there are some who rectify quickly and some who do so over a longer period of time and many reincarnations. Chapter 4, Part 6. Chapter 4, Part Types of Reincarnation. Part 6, Elisha, Aked, Difference. Another reason will be explained for the difference mentioned between a righteous person and an evil person, and what they, once again, Za'il, or Z, Z, quotation mark, L, a Hebrew, I imagine, Zayin, quotation mark, Lamed, or Zayin, Yod, Lamed, a Hebrew abbreviation placed after someone's name to indicate that they have passed away and are fondly remembered. It stands for Zikrono Lebracha or Zikrona Lebracha when referring to a woman. This translates as, may his or her memory be a blessing. This is from the MIT Glossary of Hebrew Acronyms. So MIT.edu/JIK/glossary.htm. So once again, part 6, Elisha, Acher, difference. Another reason will be explained for the difference mentioned between a righteous person and an evil person, and what they, Za'il, have written regarding Elisha, Acher, who will be understood. Footnote 205, Elisha ben Abuya, a rabbi of note and colleague of the great Rabbi Akiva, became the quintessential heretic because of a particular incident. Hagiga 14b. As a result, he is referred to as Acher, which means other, or the final one, or how he ended up, indicating that he left Torah Judaism. He cannot he cannot be punished because he learned Torah, etc. Hagiga 15b. A righteous person who learns Torah, especially from the earlier generations, is not punished with Gehinnom. Footnote 206. The fires of Gehinnom after death cannot affect someone who learned Torah. Hagiga 27a. Yet it is essential that his sins be cleared so that he will be able to enter the Garden of Eden. Thus, there is no other rectification for him except reincarnation. For every sin for which he does not atone through suffering during his lifetime, and for which he cannot go to Gehenna to receive his punishment for them, he will require another reincarnation to rectify it. Hence, he will have many reincarnations to atone for and rectify his sins, unlike an evil person who can go to Gehenna and empty out his sins at one time and not be required to return in many reincarnations. A question could be asked. It appears seemingly that it is better to go to Gehenna and immediately become clear of all one's sins instead of returning in many reincarnations. The following seems to me, Chaim, in my humble opinion, a way to answer the question. The Holy One, blessed is he, who foresees the future and looks ahead, knows that if this evil person will return in reincarnations, he will add to his sins and transgressions, and his sins will increase over his merits. Therefore, seeing that he has already completed the few mitzvot essential for him based upon the root of his nefesh, footnote 207, everyone, based upon the root of his soul, is naturally drawn to perform certain types of mitzvot. He removes him from the world and placed him in Gehenna to clear him of his sins, leaving his merits intact because he is desirous of kindness. Luft is kindness in Arabic, Aramaic, and likely Hebrew. Luft. Footnote 208, removing an evil person from the world and letting him atone in Gehenna is an act of kindness since it denies him the chance to destroy all his merits. However, for a righteous person whose sins are less than his merits, they can be eliminated through suffering during reincarnations, leaving his many merits intact, adding to in each reincarnation without limit. His reward will likewise be wondrous in the manner that our rabbis have said. The Holy One, blessed is he, wanted to increase the merits of Israel, and therefore he gave them much Torah and mitzvot. Footnote 209. The simple explanation of this statement is that it refers to a single lifetime which can be filled with the learning of Torah and the performance of mitzvot. The sod is that it means that the righteous person is given many opportunities over many lifetimes to learning much Torah and to performing countless mitzvot. Mekos 23b. Uh, what is suffering? Suffering is akin to having a copper flat panel which has become oxidized and turned into a green color, and then using an abrasive and some type of abrasive solution and possibly an abrasive cloth to remove not only the oxidation, the green color, but also shine it to smooth it down so you can see your reflection in it. And the one seeking to see his reflection in it is God, and that is suffering, and it comes in many forms. But by reading Torah and performing mitzvot, you become aware of why certain things are as they are. I've found I've read the Old Testament and the New Testament. I've read the Quran and other scriptures a lot, but in studying Torah and reading Rashi and hearing what some people are saying about it, I've learned that it is perfectly fine that Judaism offers pragmatic reasons why one should accept something that is good for you or bad for you, um, without asking you to do so in faith. There are reasons why you can come up with, and when you learn them, especially after 40 years old, you realize what Judaism is, or at least what Mosaic uh, Judaism is, is a type of, to use a term that has a meaning, a yoga, a Dharma yoga, which if you learn these things and then perform them, Dharma is to learn, yoga is to perform. If you learn these things and you perform them, you will live a life similar to those who have learned them and performed them. And despite the difficulties that the Jewish community has undergone since its formation, I would argue that Jewish individuals are amongst the smartest, most successful, and creative peoples upon the earth, and are usually envied for that, and should be. Emulate it for it. And a lot of that has to do with, if not all of it, the program set in place by Moses. Uh, Bless him, and continue to be followed and refined, but not really moved away from over the last 3,700 years or so. Chapter 4, Types of Reincarnation, Part 7, Rav, Sheshish. The reincarnation of Rav Sheshish, footnote 210, he lived around 250 of the Common Era, or more specifically, the Caesar's era, the calendar put into place by Julius Caesar, um, the Julian calendar, before its correction by the Catholic monk Gregory. He lived around 250 of the Common Era. We are now in 2022 of the Common Era, or Caesar's era, and it's mentioned often throughout the Talmud. The reincarnation of Rev Sheshish was explained in earlier discussions regarding the matter of a double reincarnation. This also is the matter of what is written in the Talmud regarding Rev Sheshish, that he was blind, and that when he learned Torah, he was joyous and would say, "Rejoice, my soul, for you I have read, for you I have learned." Seemingly, this is not understandable, since this was for his personal benefit and not for that of another. As it says, if one becomes wise, it is for himself that he becomes wise. Avodah Zarah 18b. Also, we should be precise that he said, "my nefesh," and why this is with respect to Rav Sheshish as opposed to another. To understand this, we will begin with the matter of Rav Sheshish and his reincarnation. Know that Baba ben Buta, the pious, a student of Shemeh, the elder, and who brought a doubtful transgression offering all of his life. Footnote 211, Chrysos 26a. In his humility, Baba Vimbuta brought such an offering daily, assuming that at some time he must have committed a sin of which he was yet unaware. This is an offering that you bring to the Kohanim and the Levitical priests at the uh, Beit Hamikdash, or well, which is the tent of meeting that is prepared, that was carried to the desert and prepared for Jewish sacrifices. Uh, and so there are sin offerings, there are celebration offerings, there are doubtful transgression offerings, and there offerings for children's birth and some other offerings as well. You bring them there, and the Levite Kohen prepares the offering in a particular way. Maybe he also slaughters it. Maybe you bring it up there already slaughtered. And then uh, doing that particular type of offering, you can find these in the book of Leviticus. Uh, he roasted unto the Lord, and the smell reaches outward just like incense. And for some reason, the magnetic spiritual reality of the divine that is connected to that tent of meeting prefers these tannins and resins and lipids and how they smell when it is burned, and there is a positive uh, result from it. May the practice return soon, but at your best when you're barbecuing, say unto the Lord for the right purpose, and hopefully that'll count as one of your offerings when you're out there grilling. Know that Baba Bimbuta, the pious, a student of the Sheme, the elder, and who brought a doubtful transgression offering all of his life, returned and reincarnated in Rab Sheshish to complete some rectification that he still required. Since Herod blinded him, Rab Sheshish was also blind. Footnote 212, Herod was paranoid that the rabbis were planning to depose him, so he murdered countless rabbis and blinded Baba Vimbuta, Baba Basla Foray. This is very likely Herod the Great, who rebuilt the Temple of Jerusalem, not his son Herod Antipas. Thus, the letters base Aleph, footnote 213, which spells Baba, are the same as Shin Tav, which spells Shishish, and Ashbesh. Footnote, a form of gematria in which the last letter of the Aleph base, Tav, is interchangeable with the first letter, Aleph, and the second letter, Shin, with the second letter, base, and so on. To teach us simple gematria, you I know it from the Arabic letters. There are 28 Arabic letters. There are 24 Hebrew letters, and then there are four that are counted in different forms. And so uh, they range from 1 to 9. Then the tens, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Then the hundreds, 100, 200, 300, 400. And with Arabic, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1000. And so they go all the way up to those are in a particular arrangement. Sometimes there is a variance in them based on whether you're from Ladino and from the Maghreb, the West, or you're Shami, like Shemeh, and from the East. Um, and then those are counted up Uh, Words are spelled out, they're counted up. And since these languages are quite old, it's been found that there are patterns in the numbers that show up. And using different methods that give people various confidences, you can make a correspondence between two things. And this is also a cipher system. So base aleph, so 221 in this system are the same as Shin Shin Tov, which are 30, 30, 400. Um, and the way of this is so the first letter in Gematria is Aleph, and the very last one is Tov. The second, and so base Aleph, Shin Shin Tov. Uh, the Aleph is then taken for the Tov, so you would say base. You would figure those out, and then Tov. So base Aleph becomes initially before working out the base Tov. So Aleph and Tov are opposite each other. And then I have a chart from Arabic that goes through and says which ones are across from each other in a circular stance called the Nefesh ar-Rahman, uh, literally the Malkuthi soul of the Merciful One, so which is still very high. And so base is worth two, but it's also the second position. And Shin, which is worth 300, is in the, well, and that makes a lot of sense, is in the 23rd position. So up 24. So you, the second to last is the same as the second. The first is the same as the last. The second to last, the first is the same as the last. The second is the same as the second to last. And in doing so, base Aleph, Baba Bimbuta, uh, and Shinshintov, they were able to put together that these two people are the same. So if this is your faith tradition, you're learning kind of the shamanistic understanding of gematria and letters and numbers uh, with a bit of inspiration, using these methods and looking at two people who are similar, you can come up with this correspondence. If you're a cipher, there's a way to, this is almost like Pick Latin. We're kind of replacing letters and numbers, it's very similar to that. So you would, and that's another way to look at it. But it is a way used to determine which person is which person, even if their parents raised them to be like this previous person. If the parents of uh, Rav Sheshish really wanted, and say he was born blind. So, we want him to be like Baba Ben Buta, the pious. So we will offer him a name corresponding to his with the hope that the soul of Baba Ben Buta would enter into Shishish and find comfort there and allow Baba Bimbuta to rectify some of his difficulties from that before that he didn't rectify without taking another full incarnation. And what is the pragmatic understanding, the logical one? You can argue that I have, my name is again Christopher Neal. I have done a general DNA profile through my heritage. I thought I had one particular heritage, and so when I did it, instead of telling me my ethnicity, it told me which countries uh, a lot of my family were in that kind of corresponded to what I thought I was. I think in being nice, not that it was inaccurate, but I have a bunch of family in places where that corresponds to the identity that I thought I had. But when I inputted the digital information from that into another DNA profiler called My True Ancestry, it turns out that I am only 4.52% of the culture that I thought I was. And I'm not only the way that most Native Americans look at it is blood quantum. I have a high blood quantum of not only a particular Native American group that exists, of course, throughout the world, but it has been in America for 36,000 years. I also have Samaritan Levite and Samaritan Ephraim and Samaritan Manasseh heritage. And I looked, and they provide you a list, if you have one, of royalty and famous people who are in your family. And I still believe, even though it hasn't come up, you should be within the same genetic family as the person you're incarnating into or have incarnated into you, because it's kind of what they call junk DNA. That junk DNA can turn on in a certain light pattern and give you many of the characteristics physically, mentally, emotionally, as the person that you're trying to turn on. So, again, a pragmatic approach. And so I have a number of family members who uh, are not remembered well. And so I've looked at that and I've tried to, I believe that I can make improvements on some of the things that they did even horribly wrong by living a certain life. And I'm aware that I carry that legacy with me. Um, and so I'm responsible for some of it, at least in avoiding their mistakes and making better upon them. So you may look into your own background and see that you, say you're an American, you descend from Robert E. Lee, and that your family has been known to be so aggressive in politics that you could even split the country. So you may want to be very careful with your political leanings going forward and do your best to make sure you're always keeping the country united while also expressing your deeper understandings because your family has the capacity to cause a rift. So continuing, this brings us to the explanation. Know that someone who does not complete his rectification during his first reincarnation must reincarnate a second time to complete it. Even he only lacks something small. If in his first reincarnation he completed his nefesh and lacked only something minute, when he returns in the second reincarnation, all the reward for the Torah and mitzvos from the second reincarnation will be for the sake of his nefesh that came in the second body to be completed. When he gets up at the time of resurrection, the nefesh will return to the first body in which he learned Torah and the majority of the mitzvos he needed to perform were done. It only came to the second body on loan. Rav Shishish knew that his nefesh, which had first been in the body of Baba ben Buddha, a man of great learning and piety, only reincarnated in a second body for something small that was lacking. Therefore, his body was sad about this because all of his efforts would be taken by this nefesh, which in the end would return to the first body at the time of resurrection. Footnote 216, that is, the body of Baba Ben Buddha. In this way, all of his Torah learning and mitzvos were for the sake of his nefesh and not his body. Therefore, it was fitting for the nefesh to rejoice and not the body. Thus it says, "Rejoice, my nefesh," etc., and not me, because for you I read, and for you I learn, and for your benefit and not for my benefit. End of chapter 4.